Jay Leno has always been the man who made people laugh, even on the days when he felt pain behind the camera. But now he has revealed something so serious, so unexpected, that even his closest friends were shaken. What he shared has left millions stunned, and it may change the way people look at him forever. Jay Leno spent years becoming the kind of figure people trusted without question. He was the familiar face that ended their nights with comfort, humor, and a sense that the world wasn't as heavy as it felt. For years he delivered this feeling with such consistency that many assumed nothing could ever shake him. That is why the recent news he revealed came as a shock. It was horrifying not only for what it contained but for the truth it exposed about his life behind the camera. People always believed Jay was built from steel. His energy felt endless, his work ethic seemed superhuman, and his smile appeared glued to his face in a way that made him seem untouchable. But what nobody knew was that Jay had been carrying levels of exhaustion and hidden pain that he hid from the world for decades. That pain finally caught up with him in ways he could no longer ignore, and what he shared about it stunned millions. Jay's story begins long before the accidents, long before the flames touched his face or the motorcycle crash forced him to confront his own fragility. It began with a deep-rooted belief he carried since childhood, a belief that strength meant silence. He was raised in a home where emotions were considered private, something you did not put on display. His parents worked hard, rarely complained, and pushed through their own struggles quietly. Jay learned that same habit early in life. He grew up thinking that the world respected people who didn't talk about their pain. So when he entered comedy, he treated every hardship as something he needed to hide. He told himself that laughter was his job, and that nobody wanted to hear about the things that scared him or hurt him. That mindset followed him through the years and became a silent rule he lived by. When he became the host of The Tonight Show, the pressure increased. Suddenly millions of people expected him to be happy, funny, and energetic every single night. Even on days when his body felt weak or his mind felt tired, he forced himself to push through. He couldn't imagine taking a day off. He didn't want to fail his audience or give anyone a reason to doubt him. But the truth is that years of ignoring your body eventually catch up with you. Jay started feeling warning signs long before the accidents happened. He experienced small aches, chest tightness, moments of dizziness, and waves of fatigue that lasted longer than usual. But he brushed every symptom aside. He convinced himself these things were normal for someone who worked as much as he did. Behind the scenes, people noticed the changes. His friends saw him lean against furniture when he thought nobody was watching. They saw him touch his chest during conversations. They noticed he paused more often before walking out on stage. They asked if he was okay, but Jay always smiled and said he was fine. He didn't want anyone worrying about him. But the body has a way of warning you when something is wrong. And if you ignore the warnings get louder. Jay's life changed in a split second when the fire accident happened. He described it as a moment that came without warning, like a lightning strike. 1 second he was working on one of his vintage cars, something he loved deeply, and the next he was engulfed in flames. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. He felt heat searing his skin, felt panic rush through him, and felt time slow down into terrifying seconds he would never forget. When the accident photos went public, people saw the burns and bruises. They saw the physical damage. But they didn't see the deeper truth. They didn't see the fear that settled inside him, the realization that life could change permanently in a single moment. They didn't see how this accident exposed something much more serious happening beneath the surface. Doctors told Jay the burns were treatable with time and care, but they also found something else, evidence that his body had been under far too much stress for far too long. They warned him that his immune system was struggling, that his body wasn't repairing itself quickly, and that he needed serious rest. They urged him to slow down, to take time off, to protect himself. Jay ignored the advice. Just days after the accident, he returned to work. He smiled, he joked, he pretended everything was back to normal. But inside he felt a fear that was new to him. He wondered if he had pushed himself too far. He wondered if his body was trying to tell him something he didn't want to hear. Then came the motorcycle crash. Another hit. Another moment of violence. Another reminder that life had a limit, even for people who believed they could handle anything. Jay admitted later that when the accident happened, he felt a kind of shock that went deeper than physical pain. It was the shock of realizing he was not invincible. This time, doctors forced him into deeper tests. They ran scans, monitored his heart, examined his stress levels, and looked for internal injuries. What they found worried them. They told Jay he had underlying issues that had gone untreated for years, issues that could worsen if he stayed on the same path. This was the horrifying news Jay shared publicly, the news that he had been living with dangerous health risks for far longer than he realized. These risks had made both accidents more dangerous than they should have been. They had weakened his recovery. They had put him closer to the edge than he understood at the time. Jay admitted he felt genuine fear for the first time. He said the thought of losing everything, not just work, not just fame, but time, hit him harder than any physical injury ever could. He realized he had lived his entire life believing that slowing down meant failing. But now he saw that slowing down might be the only thing that could save him. He spoke about nights where he could not sleep, nights where he stared at the ceiling thinking about how close he came to a different ending. He thought about the people who loved him, the people who depended on him, the people who would be left behind if something happened. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to confront fear instead of hiding behind humor. The horrifying part about Jay's confession is not just the medical facts. It's the emotional truth behind them. Jay revealed that he had been living like a man running on empty for years. He had ignored his body, ignored his stress, ignored his limits, and pushed himself because he felt responsible for making others happy. He said he regrets that now. He regrets thinking he had to be a superhero. He regrets waiting for accidents to force him into awareness. He regrets pretending everything was fine when he knew something was wrong. Jay said he wanted to share this story because he didn't want others to repeat his mistakes. He didn't want people to think ignoring their health was a sign of strength. He wanted to remind people that even the strongest-looking individuals can be fragile inside. Even the people who make others laugh can cry when the world is quiet. Jay has now started a new chapter in his life, one where he is finally paying attention to his body. He is allowing himself to rest. He is letting doctors guide him. He is taking recovery seriously for the first time in many years. He still loves his work, but he now understands that work cannot replace health. His fans reacted with shock and concern, but also with deep respect. They saw a different side of Jay, a side that felt human, vulnerable, and relatable. They saw that this man who spent years making the world smile finally let people see the truth behind the smile. Jay's story reveals a message that goes beyond fame, beyond comedy, beyond entertainment. It teaches that strength is not about pretending to be fine. Strength is facing what scares you. Strength is admitting when you need help. Strength is understanding that life is precious, and that taking care of yourself is not a weakness but a responsibility. Jay's horrifying news was a wake-up call for him and for millions of others watching. It showed that even the most successful people can drift away from their own well-being. It showed that pain does not disappear just because someone hides it. It showed that life has a way of forcing you to confront the truth when you refuse to do it yourself. Jay Leno is not the same man he was before the accidents. He is softer now, more thoughtful, more aware of his limits. But he is also growing stronger in a new way. Not the kind of strength that comes from pushing through exhaustion, but the kind that comes from honesty, humility, and learning to value the time he has left. Jay Leno has always been known as the man who made people feel lighter. No matter how heavy the world became, he had the gift of lifting spirits with a simple joke, a warm voice, or a moment of humor that made life feel less overwhelming. But behind that gift lived a quiet struggle he hid from almost everyone. When he finally opened up about it, the world realized how much pain he had been carrying in silence. Jay's story is not just about accidents or injuries. It is about the emotional weight that comes from living a life built on pressure, expectations, and the belief that you must always stay strong. He grew up in a household where hard work was respected and complaining was discouraged. His parents pushed through their struggles silently, teaching him that resilience meant keeping your feelings to yourself. He learned early that the world admired people who stayed steady, even when life tried to break them. So when he stepped into the world of stand-up comedy, he took that mindset with him. He believed he had to earn every laugh, every opportunity, every moment on stage. He never allowed himself to slow down, because slowing down felt like he was letting people down. But fame brings its own pressure. When Jay became the host of The Tonight Show, his life changed in a way he never expected. His face was everywhere. His voice filled millions of homes. People came to rely on him as a source of comfort at the end of long, stressful days. Jay understood this responsibility, and he took it more seriously than most people realized. Behind the scenes, however, the pressure took a toll. Jay stopped taking real breaks. He stopped listening to his body. He pushed through exhaustion, aches, stress, and sleepless nights because he felt the world needed him. He convinced himself that he had to stay strong at all times, no matter what was happening inside him. There were days when Jay walked on stage with pain hidden beneath his smile. He felt tension in his chest that worried him. He felt dizziness during rehearsals. He felt moments when his energy dropped suddenly, but he always told himself it was temporary. He believed he could handle everything. His coworkers noticed the changes. They saw him sit down more often, something he never used to do. They saw him touch his chest or rub the back of his neck when he thought nobody was watching. They heard him sigh more deeply than before. Some approached him with concern, but Jay always brushed it off with humor. He hated the idea of worrying anyone. Years of ignoring these signs caused deeper issues to form. But Jay remained silent, believing that the world saw him as the strong, unstoppable entertainer who could withstand anything. He didn't want to break that image. He didn't want to look weak. He didn't want to reveal how overwhelmed he truly felt. Then the fire accident changed everything. The accident was sudden, violent, and unlike anything Jay had ever faced. Flames wrapped around him with terrifying speed, burning his face, chest, and hands. He remembered the sound of the fire, the heat of it, and the fear that rushed through him as he realized he could die in that moment. He called it one of the worst shocks of his life. When people saw the photos, they felt devastated. But what nobody saw was the internal battle happening inside Jay. He felt embarrassed by the vulnerability the accident exposed. He didn't want people to see him injured. He didn't want sympathy. He didn't want to admit how terrified he felt during those moments of burning pain. Even in the hospital, he joked with nurses and staff. But inside, he felt different. He felt shaken. He felt fragile in a way he had never felt before. He felt the reality of how quickly life can slip away. But even then, he convinced himself that returning to work quickly would make everything feel normal again. So he returned to work just days later. He walked into interviews, appeared on shows, and laughed through the pain. Fans admired him for being tough, but they didn't know the truth. They didn't know he was pushing through fear. They didn't know his body was still weak. They didn't know he was ignoring doctor warnings because he didn't want to face the possibility that something deeper was wrong. After the accident, doctors insisted on more tests. They noticed he wasn't healing as fast as someone his age should. They questioned him about his lifestyle. Jay minimized everything, telling them he felt fine. But the doctors weren't convinced. They insisted on deeper examinations, and what they discovered became part of the horrifying news Jay eventually revealed. They found that years of stress, long work hours, lack of rest, and ignoring physical symptoms had slowly created internal health issues that could no longer be ignored. They warned him that continuing the same lifestyle could lead to irreversible damage. They told him his body was in a vulnerable state. They told him he needed to take this seriously. Jay heard the words but wasn't ready to accept them. He believed he had survived the accident, and that surviving meant he was still strong enough to keep going. So he tried to return to his old routines. He tried to pretend the danger wasn't real. But then came the motorcycle crash. The crash was another violent jolt that forced him to confront reality. This time, he didn't just feel pain. He felt fear in his bones. He felt the shock of hitting the ground. He felt his body protest in ways it hadn't before. He realized that his body wasn't bouncing back the way it used to. He realized he had pushed himself too far. Doctors again insisted on tests. This time, Jay couldn't hide the truth. He was too injured, too shaken, too aware of his own limits. The results left him stunned. The doctors explained that his response to the accidents revealed underlying health risks that needed immediate treatment. These were not small issues. These were serious concerns that demanded lifestyle changes. Jay felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: fear of the future. He thought about the people who supported him, the fans who loved him, the friends who stood by him. He wondered what would happen if he didn't take this seriously. He wondered how close he had come to losing everything. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to sit quietly and feel the weight of those thoughts. When he finally spoke openly about this, the world was shocked. People who had followed his career for years had never heard him speak with such vulnerability. They were used to seeing him confident, cheerful, and unshaken. Hearing him reveal his fears created a new sense of understanding. People saw a different side of Jay, a side that had been hidden for far too long. Jay talked about the emotional walls he had built around himself. He said he spent years acting strong even when he was struggling. He said he refused to show weakness because he feared disappointing others. But the accidents broke those walls. They forced him to confront the truth he spent years avoiding. He admitted he had been afraid to slow down because slowing down meant facing the reality that he was aging. He didn't want to accept that his body had limits. He didn't want to admit he needed help. But he realized he was not doing anyone a favor by pretending to be invincible. He realized people would rather see him healthy than endlessly pushing himself past his limits. Jay said he felt a mix of sadness and relief when he finally shared the truth. Sadness because he realized he spent years hiding his struggles. Relief because he no longer had to pretend. He could finally let people see the human being behind the performer. Fans responded with overwhelming support. They admired his honesty. They felt connected to him in a new way. They saw him not as an untouchable entertainer but as someone who battled fear and pain just like they did. That connection mattered deeply to Jay. Since revealing the horrifying news, Jay has made changes he never would have considered before. He is allowing himself to rest. He is listening to his doctors. He is taking steps to protect his health in ways he once ignored. He is learning to balance his passion for work with the need to care for himself. He said he still loves entertaining people. He still loves making the world laugh. But now he knows he can only do that if he protects himself first. He understands that the body cannot be pushed forever. He understands that strength is not about ignoring pain but facing it honestly. Jay also hopes his story will serve as a lesson for others. He wants people to understand that ignoring your health is not a sign of bravery. He wants people to recognize the warning signs before they become dangerous. He wants people to know that even the strongest individuals need help sometimes. He said the accidents taught him something powerful: life can change in a second, and you must not take that second for granted. You must take care of yourself now, not later. You must listen to your body even when it whispers, because if you ignore the whisper, it can turn into a scream. Jay's journey is far from over. He is healing, growing, and learning to live differently. He is becoming stronger in a new way, a quiet way, a way rooted in honesty and self-respect. His story is heartbreaking, inspiring, and deeply human. It is a reminder that no one is unbreakable. But with courage, vulnerability, and self-care, life can be rebuilt in ways that feel even more meaningful than before.